Greece and Turkey have been embroiled in a long-standing dispute over maritime borders. Tensions have escalated since summer 2020, when Turkey actively embarked on searching for oil and gas in maritime zones, not yet delimited between the two states. Successive military exercises in the Mediterranean and the Aegean Seas have contributed to sustaining the tension in the region. Dialogue between the two states has not led to a positive outcome yet.
Hi Anas, very good to have you with us today for this interview on the Libya relationship with both Greece and Turkey. And the first question to you is, how has Libya been historically aligned with both Greece and Turkey, and how did this relationship kind of play out in the long run in Libya?
Thanks for the question. Thank you for the interview. It's a really interesting question. I think that the history of Libya is that it's been an actor, but it's also been a theater where the geopolitics of the region, the economic interests of regional actors, and the ideology of the Middle East and North Africa are all playing out at the same time. And that's how Turkey and Greece have been drawn to Libya, or how Libya has been drawn to Turkey and Greece. That actually begins in the mid-1970s, after Turkey intervened militarily in northern Cyprus, and Gaddafi actually expressed his support for the Turkish administration at the time, following the US embargo in 1974. But I think it would be a stretch to say that Gaddafi had a pro-Turkey stance at that position. When we look at the micro-politics of Turkey, we also see that Gaddafi supported Kurdish opposition movements like the PKK, Armenian opposition movements like the Asala group, and gave them safe passage and support in Tripoli, to the detriment of Turkey itself. So also, we should remember that as much as Libya has been a theater in the contemporary history of these relationships, Greece and Turkey at times, especially Turkey, has been a theater for Libyan interests. But I would also say that when we move forward, we can see that that has dramatically changed with the events of the last 10 years, since the Arab Spring in 2011. If we look at Greece and Turkey's position towards Libya, you could easily say that Turkey, by the time the revolution had begun in Libya, Turkey had around $20 billion worth of economic contracts, at least 200 contracts that were signed there. So there was a very significant economic dimension between Turkish and Libyan relations. Nevertheless, Turkey sided with the NATO alliance that began its intervention in Libya around April 2011, and it became a leading member of the support group towards the first Libyan or post-Gaddafi administration, the National Transitional Council. So in the race for influence between Turkey and Greece, I would say that Turkey had the kind of the leading position around that time. And also, despite the fact that it had economic incentives to remain aligned to Gaddafi, it chose a new political position based on a dramatically changing landscape across the Middle East and North Africa. This meant that essentially, with the emergence of pro-revolution and pro-democracy movements, the region also split. Turkey took a very pro-democratic approach or pro-democracy approach to these movements, whereas other regional players like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and later Egypt would take a more pro-authoritarian position towards the Arab Spring. And that's very important as we kind of run through the last decade in Libya's conflict. Around the time of this dramatic change, we could say that Greece really had a very passive foreign policy towards what was going on both in Libya and across the Middle East and North Africa. It was pretty much consumed by its own economic worries, economic concerns, and intra-EU economic concerns, and much more reluctant to interfere in a distant theatre in a foreign policy that had no benefits and no cons to draw Greece in. That again would dramatically change by 2019 after a local actor in Libya's war, Khalifa Haftar, General Khalifa Haftar, sparked a civil war after he led an offensive and a power grab to overthrow the government of national accord, the Libyan government in Tripoli. But he did this with the backing of regional and international actors, namely Russia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and France. That backing militarily came at a point where the geopolitical realities also in the Eastern Mediterranean were shifting and changing. And I think that kind of took a major transformation and a geopolitical knot of sorts to transform the entire Libyan conflict into not just a local civil war, but a theater for, as I said, geopolitics, economic interest, and ideology to all come together.
Great. Thank you, Anas, for giving us this very interesting context on this kind of relationship that at times had very different outlooks from the Gaddafi era until now. Of course, now in the current situation that you described, that we have kind of different fractions in Libya, we have now, but also now since this year we have a new government of national unity, and supposedly one government. But so maybe you can tell us a bit how and to what effect those Libyan fractions and now the new government are involved in this dispute between Greece and Turkey, and how they maybe try to benefit from it or use it to their advantage.
Absolutely. I think it's a great question, and I think to answer that question, we just need to kind of assess the last 18 months of actions to really understand and paint that picture for today. As I said, in April 2019, the Khalifa Haftar, who is the head of the Libyan National Army or the Libyan Arab Armed Forces, attempted a power grab which drew in other regional actors to support him: Russia, the United Arab Emirates, France, and Egypt. And as a result, the Libyan government at the time, the government of national accord, requested help from the EU, from the UN, from the UK, from France, and from the United States, but also from Turkey. It was met with deaf ears, and Turkey responded to the government of national accord in late 2019 in a very deeply transactional manner. It exchanged military support to the government of national accord in Tripoli against Khalifa Haftar in exchange for a rewriting of the maritime boundaries between Libya and Greece. And this is essentially, Libya and Turkey. And this has essentially provoked Greece and drawn a otherwise passive foreign policy from Greece towards Libya into a very active and proactive foreign policy in Athens. Now, the first sign of this is following the maritime MOU that was signed between Libya and Turkey. Greece expels its ambassador, it's the Libyan ambassador to Athens, Mohammed al-Menafi, who a year later would become the Libyan president of the government of national unity. Now, this is a striking coincidence, but it also is not the end of the road for Greek interests and Greek relationships with the new government of national unity. Greece has in fact sent its prime minister to visit Tripoli. We met with Mohammed al-Menafi, and the relationship seems stable, but not obviously as good as it could be. Certainly with respect to Turkey, who, following the establishment of the government of national unity in March of this year, and the supposed end of the local conflict, the international conflict, certainly in Greece's perspective, continues on. Abdulhamid Dbeibeh, the new Prime Minister of the Government of National Unity, has pledged to honour the maritime and security MOU between Turkey and Libya. And that certainly provoked a perspective in Greece that the war is not over. Perhaps it's just beginning. That has also provoked actors on the side of Khalifa Haftar, who is as much opposed to the government of national accord as he is to the government of national unity, which he has refused to offer landing permits to visit Benghazi, his stronghold, has refused to offer his political ally in the parliament, Aqila Saleh, to transfer power as the commander of the Supreme Armed Forces over to this new presidential council. This shows that there is still a significant way of the conflict that is yet to be resolved by the local actors. And I think in a geopolitical sense, that's still true. France, the UAE, and Russia and Egypt still support Khalifa Haftar and still see him playing a role in the future. As a result, they have all, in their own unique ways, drawn Greece towards supporting their alliance based on common grievances, to the detriment of Greece, which I don't think is aligned with these countries, specifically the illiberal order in the region. It's not aligned with them in their values. Now, we can see many ways in which this has played out, at least in the last 12 months. Greece has signed a new deal with France to procure Rafale jets. It's a major strategic military alliance. It has also joined Egypt and the United Arab Emirates in conducting naval and military exercises off the Eastern Mediterranean. It is building a common alliance with uncommon allies based on these common grievances without really having a common set of values. At the local level, Greece has also sent its dignitaries, its representatives to eastern Libya over the last 7 days. They've opened up a consulate in Benghazi. They have also received Aqila Saleh, the political ally of Khalifa Haftar, to the Hellenic Parliament several times. And I think that alignment informally gives us a reflection that the conflict is nowhere near being resolved, unfortunately, not only locally, but also regionally and geopolitically.
Thank you, Anas, for pointing out to us those very recent diplomatic developments between the Libyan actors and Greece, and how France also is involved in this, and maybe France is the major driver in this development, so to support Haftar from inside the European Union. What I'm wondering is how this also created a rift between European countries and how this played out also in Libya, that we had Italy much stronger supporting the government of national accord, and we had Greece and France supporting Haftar in the east. And yeah, that kind of, this also blocked for a very long time European common efforts towards Libya. What do you think?
It's a fascinating question, and I think it goes back to the heart of not only Libya's conflict, but the way and the nature and the character of Libya's conflict. And I think that the symbolic thread that ties together the actors that have supported Haftar is not only that they're in a liberal order and they have a pro-authoritarian view of the region and Libya specifically, but it's also that because of Khalifa Haftar's illegitimacy, he is not part of the Libyan state, he is an illegitimate actor, the deniability aspect is much higher. None of those countries, including France, the UAE, Egypt, or Russia, have ever publicly declared their support for Khalifa Haftar. And so the need for mercenaries over reliable and regular militaries has been a characteristic of this conflict, using drones and unmanned vehicles and aircraft as opposed to using regular jets to declare war formally and publicly through the UN mechanisms and the EU mechanisms, as opposed to clandestine special forces operations. Now, this also is a reason why France is perhaps more under the cosh, much more under pressure as an actor, given that it is the only European actor publicly, or that we know of, inside Haftar's international alliance. Because it has a democratic backbone, it's a leading member of the Democratic Club of Europe, it also needs to use that aspect of deniability. So despite the fact that it has supported Haftar over the last 5 years, longer than Russia, who intervened only in 2019 militarily, today France enjoys the diplomatic less scrutiny and diplomatic shield that Russia offers. Russia captures the attention and France can stay in the background. Nevertheless, France has used not only its threat to use its UN veto, but also its EU veto. And it knows that in April of 2019, when the EU attempted, alongside Italian pressure, to sanction Haftar, that France reluctantly pushed against that. And so that created this intra-European rivalry. And so by drawing in Greece as a result of Turkish intervention, France has a stronger position and can suggest to its international allies, to its regional allies, and other EU member states that its position in Libya should be the common EU position against a common Turkish enemy, and that Italy is the outlier. Now, this is all a local and microscopic picture, but if we zoom out and look at the geostrategic picture, it's bigger than just European competition. Russia's ability and stance and position in central Libya is bigger than just a patch of terrain in the desert. This is about a geostrategic objective of causing fissures within the NATO alliance. Sirte, where the Russian mercenaries today have been in Libya since June of last year, is at the southern flank of NATO and is drawing fissures amongst its key members, some of whom are EU members like Italy and France and Greece, but others that are non-EU members like Turkey. And it is creating major fissures amongst that group. And Russia, whilst everyone else is playing checkers, Russia is playing geostrategic chess at everyone's expense, whether that be Greece and Turkey, France or Italy. All of those sides are losers.
Thanks, Anas, for pointing this out. That's very interesting to hear, especially on how Russia is benefiting from this huge rift that's also appearing between EU countries and NATO countries. Just to go a bit to the more micro level again, I mean, we see that Libya is kind of a theater or a pawn in this game and in this conflict between Greece and Turkey. But how or are Libyan actors kind of using this conflict to their advantage, and how so? And are they successful in getting something out of it?
Well, I think that they're trying and attempting, and that's the most important aspect, that they're trying to draw in international actors into their own dispute. And I think that the really important aspect to remember about this is that by doing so, they have broken international norms in the process. That Greece, by meeting with Agel Salah, who today is deemed a political spoiler in Libya, that it is empowering the spoiling of the broader German-led and Berlin process that has begun in January of 2020, by empowering these actors and giving them diplomatic prestige by hosting them in the Hellenic Parliament. It does so. The very same thing can be said about the ways in which all of the Libyan actors in the West and the East, arguably not in the South, but in the West and the East, and on the both sides of this civil war, have tried to draw in actors to break the international norms of conflict or the financing of conflict. So that we could argue that the idea of bringing in Turkish-backed Syrian mercenaries to Libya is breaking an international norm in the conflict, despite the fact that this was a UN-recognized government that required UN members and UN Security Council members, including those that are supporting Haftar, ironically, like France and Russia, to be able to actually defend without the need of breaking that kind of international norm. If we go back to the Eastern Alliance, they are meeting with individuals and members of essentially a potential breakaway state in Eastern Libya, and it is adding fuel to the federalist or secessionist ambitions of Eastern Libyans by opening up a consulate that symbolically is giving more diplomatic recognition, but to a side in the conflict that have only opened up diplomatic relations with Syria's Bashar al-Assad over the last several years. So again, it's finding those uncommon alliances. And if we get to the peak and the apex of this aspect, it's the way that this conflict has been financed by working alongside Agel Salah, who is essentially part of a breakaway or a pushing away government in the east of the country, and his central bank governor, who also has a separatist parallel central bank that was supported by Russia. They're also working with a part of the terrain of Libya that has illegally requested and printed $10 billion worth of counterfeit dinars to sustain and fuel the conflict. Now, this is not just about Libya. We have to look at the broader, not only regional dynamics, but global dynamics. Never has a war been fought in the way that it is being fought today in Libya. It's never been fought by unmanned drones in the way that it has been fought in Libya. It has never been almost exclusively fought by mercenaries and not by militaries. And it is certainly the only case in history where the financing of that war was not done with either gold or US dollars or regular currencies, but was a counterfeit currency printed by a sovereign printer of cash, Goznak, in Russia. Now, this has major implications, not only for Libya and not only for the region, but how other wars in the future may be fought. And I think when Libyans request the breaking of international norms, and they hope that people will turn a blind eye internationally, diplomatically, militarily, and economically, they forget that they leave a footprint. And it's the footprint and the suggestion in other conflicts and other future conflicts where the Libya civil war may be the case study that not only broke diplomacy at the UN Security Council, but broke every single norm that we know about in terms of funding and financing and fighting wars.
Thank you so much, Anas. I mean, that's a very strong warning there. So thank you for walking us through this, and thanks taking your time for us.
Thank you so much for giving me your time and to give me the opportunity this afternoon. Thank you.